Good day, everyone. We are the Group 1, and we're going to report about our chosen organization that certifies sustainable tourism practices, and that is International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, specifically the Green List. So, this is our team, and this is the sequence and the assigned topics that each of us are going to report. So these are the agendas that we're going to report. First, we're going to introduce about the IUCN, its history, its mission, vision, and goal, and then the projects of IUCN Green List, its sustainable practices, and then lastly, the criteria for programs. So to start, I'm going to briefly introduce to you about the IUCN, its founder, where its headquarters, and the two lists of IUCN. So IUCN, or International Union for Conservation of Nature, is an international organization working in the field of nature conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. It is involved in data gathering and analysis, research, field projects, advocacy, and education. It has more than 1,400 member organizations and some 15,000 experts. So it is the global authority on the status of the natural world and the measures needed to safeguard it. So who was behind the formation of IUCN? So when established, the representatives of governance and conservation organizations spurred by UNESCO signed a formal act constituting the International Union for the Protection of Nature, or IUPN. So the initiative to set up the new organization came from UNESCO, and especially from its first Director General, the British biologist Julian Huxley. So Sir Julian Sorrel Huxley, FRS, was an English evolutionary biologist, eugenicist, and internationalist. He was a proponent of natural selection and a leading figure in the mid-20th century modern synthesis. Now, if you're wondering where is IUCN's headquarters, it is found in Gland, Switzerland. So, for more information about its head office, in one of Europe's greenest office buildings, which is in Gland, Switzerland, is where the IUCN Conservation Center is located also. So this conservation center is a benchmark for sustainable construction because it incorporated a series of innovative ways, such as the use of rainwater for toilets and irrigation, its heat recuperation from refrigerators to produce hot water. They have like 700 solar panels, energy efficient lighting, local and recycled building materials, geothermal heating, and a decentralized carbon dioxide controlled air supply system. Now, this conservation center also hosts other conservation organizations like the WWF International, the Ramsar Convention, and other. And now we're going to talk about the two lists of IUCNs, which is the Red List and the Green List. Red List of threatened species, Green List of protected and conserved areas. So to help get this point across, a team of IUCN scientists are hammering out the details for a new list that would work as a companion to the red one, because red list is already well known and is a long term already. They call it the green list, and they hope to launch it as soon as 2020. While the red list examines one criterion, a species' proximity to extinction, the green list assesses a species' conservation legacy, its survival's dependence on those efforts, the wild population's overall recovery potential. So, in other words, the green list will serve as an all in one analysis of an animal's past, present, and future. Since our topic is specifically about the green list, I'm going to just briefly talk about the red list of IUCN. So, the IUCN's red list of threatened species, also known as the IUCN Red List or Red Data Book, which is founded in 1964, as I've said, it's just dugay na jud siya nga list sa IUCN. It is the world's most comprehensive inventory of the global conservation status of biological species. It uses a set of precise criteria to evaluate the extinction risk of thousands of species and subspecies. So these criteria are relevant to all species and all regions of the world. So it divides species into 9 categories. We have the NE or not evaluated, DD data deficient, LC list concern, NT near threatened, VU vulnerable, EN or endangered, CR critically endangered, EW extinct in the wild, and EX for extinct. And now we're going to talk about the IUCN's Green List of Protected and Conserved Areas. So the IUCN Green List is a global campaign for successful nature conservation. At its heart is the Green List sustainability standard that provides a global benchmark for how to meet the environmental challenges of the 21st century. So the IUCN Green List offers locally relevant expert guidance to help achieve fair and effective nature conservation results in protected and conserved areas. So it can help guarantee that wildlife and ecosystems can survive, thrive, and bring value to communities everywhere. So now we're going to talk about the history of IUCN throughout the years, which will be then reported by Dale Jason.
So thank you, Ms. Janica Timbal, for that very comprehensive report. So now let's move on to the history of how IUCN is being established. So now in the first bullet, we have here on the 5th of October, 1948, IUCN was established. IUCN is also known as International Union for Conservation of Nature. So it is Julian Huxley, the first Director General of UNESCO, took the initiative to set up IUCN. So Julian Huxley was able to establish and build this IUCN because first of all, he has the power and authority as he is the Director General for UNESCO. So it is easier for him to establish a certain group or organization. And also he has a huge influence because of this position. Another during this date is this was the first global environmental union in which they brought together the government and the civil society who shared a same goal to protect the nature. So as we all know that the government has a different set of programs and developments in order to protect the environment and the nature, and also the civil society has its own interest on being a responsible citizen and protecting the nature. So it is the job of IUCN to bring environmental union between the two because of course they share the same interest in protecting the nature and to sustain what the resources we have on our environment. So moreover, on the second bullet, during the first decade, IUCN primary focus was to examine the impacts of human activities on nature. So first of it was IUCN flagged the damaging effects of pesticide. So pesticide was invented during the 80s. However, during the first decade of IUCN, it was the peak era in which the farmers a lot of farmers really use pesticide in order to kill the pests into their farms and agriculture products. However, it was the job of IUCN to b- build an extensive research and flag damaging effects of the pesticides with the help of the scientists and other experts in this organization, in which the research that they did, it really helped the farmers so that they can really be educated and aware the damaging effects of pesticides to their crop fields, to the agriculture, to the people who are eating those agriculture products, and also to the animals surrounding the farm. And also, the IUCN promote the use of environmental impact assessment, which has been since become the norm of many sectors and industries. So IUCN really promulgated to let the sectors and the industries, not just in the tourism but also in other concerned stakeholder industries, to let them know the daily procedures and the operations of their businesses and industries on what is the impact of it to the environment. So another, the IUCN was devoted to the protection of species and habitats necessarily for their survival. So additionally, on the next event, during the 1999, as environmental issues continued to gain importance on the international stage. So during this time, the climate change was slowly becoming rampant um, issues during this time, as the climate change is being slowly felt by the people, not just in the Philippines but also in the whole world, as the community really does something that is unethical, such as cutting of trees, burning trashes, that could really trigger to increase the climate change. So that the IUCN really took the initiative to build programs and to mitigate the issue of climate change, not just in the Philippines but also to other constituents belong to this IUCN. Moreover, the one of the significant event during this time is that the United Nations General Assembly granted the IUCN official as the observer status. Furthermore, in the early 20s, the IUCN developed business engagement strategy, in which they are prioritizing sectors with a significant impact on nature and livelihoods of people, such as mining and oil and gas, as the aim to remain to ensure that any use of natural resources is equitable and sustainable. So the IUCN established these business engagement strategies, in which they are aiming this towards to the industries and to the operations, such as business who are having mining, oil and gas, to make these resources equitable and sustainable to all of people, as most of these businesses really have a significant impact to our environment and also to the livelihood of people. Also, significant event that happened during this time is that the France has been the implementing of the green list during the 2013, as they are being recognized. Another, the IUCN pioneered on nature-based solutions, action to conserve nature, which also address the global challenges such as food and water, security, climate change, and poverty. So on the last bullet, today, with the expert, they reach more than 1,400 member organization and over 18,000 international experts, in which the IUCN is the world's largest and the most diverse environmental network, in which they continue to champion nature-based solutions as the key implementation of the international agreements, such as the Paris Agreement on Climate Change and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or we call as SDG.
Showed in the PPT are the mission, vision, and the goal of the IUCN Green List. To sum up, the objective of the IUCN Green List is IUCN Green List provides locally relevant expert assistance to aid in the achievement of equitable and successful nature conservation outcomes in protected and conserved areas. It may help ensure that species and ecosystems survive, prosper, and add value to communities across the world. During the intersessional period 2021 to 2025, the Species Survival Commission, or SSC, enables IUCN to influence, support, and help communities throughout the globe in conserving the integrity of biodiversity and ensuring that species use is both equitable and sustainable through the provision of knowledge on the status and trends of species, developing policies and guidelines, facilitating conservation planning, and catalyzing action on the ground and in the water. The IUCN Green List is a global nature protection movement. The Green List Sustainability Standard, which gives a local benchmark for how to handle the environmental concerns of the 21st century, lies at its center. So, why do we need a Green List? Our efforts to nurture and safeguard nature will determine the destiny of life on Earth. The effects of population increase, industrialization, production, and consumption habits are stretching our planet's borders on land and at sea. We are risking our very survival due to the rapid loss of ecosystems, wild animals, and natural processes. We are destroying terrestrial and marine ecosystems beyond repair, and the true consequences of the climate catastrophe are just now becoming apparent. So by that, we should aspire for change and envision a greener future. There is already a significant network of men and women combating environmental degradation in and around protected and conserved natural places across the world. They inhabit isolated and wild locations. The countrysides, towns, woods, mountains, and savannas are shores and islands, and the seas and oceans. The IUCN Green List is a global certification program aimed at achieving and promoting effective, equitable, and successful protected and conserved areas by highlighting best practices and serving as a benchmark for progress toward effective and equitable management. The Green List is a valuable tool for protected areas such it requires the demonstration of measurable conservation outcomes that should be appropriate to the site level and its natural value. It represents an approach through which an area can define an appropriate, shared, and adaptive management plan that engages with the stakeholders. It includes periodical monitoring of obligations and can therefore help determine whether conservation outcomes are being achieved. Last, it allows collaborations in different contexts, both on-site and at biogeographic level, as it is a shared and transparent methodology.
Thank you, Ms. Cherilyn Cipilanas. To continue, I will be tackling about the IUCN Green List project. These are the 4 IUCN Green List projects. First here, the BioPAMA, or the Biodiversity and Protected Areas Management Program. Next is the Tech for Nature Partnership. Then the Trilateral Cooperation, and lastly, the Sustainable Tourism and Protected Areas in a Post-COVID World. The BioPAMA, or the Biodiversity and Protected Areas Management Program, they assist the 79 African, Caribbean, and the Pacific member countries of the ACP group of states to address their priorities for improved management and governance of the biodiversity and natural resources. And also, they focus on developing capacity, supporting data collection, analysis, monitoring and reporting, guiding policy and action on the ground. And also, BioPAMA offers a variety of tools, services, and funding that stakeholders can use and contribute to the Green List engagement. Next, the Tech for Nature Partnership. Tech for Nature aims to enable more than 300 protected areas worldwide to evaluate their conservation success through the IUCN Green List standard by 2023. So this growing partnership will provide guidance on the appropriate use of technology in area-based conservation and directly involve the ICT industry sector in supporting nature conservation. Tech for Nature partnership created by the IUCN and the Huawei Tech for All program. Tech for Nature is designed as an open partnership to apply and promote digital solutions for fair and effective protected areas. The Trilateral Cooperation Project. So this project aims to improve the quality of African protected areas governance and management as a contribution to sustainable development through the implementation of the IUCN Green List and protected and conserved areas. So cooperation involves Germany, China, and 2 African countries such as Zambia and Namibia. Engaging 6 sites in Zambia and 5 in Namibia, supported by the Chinese experts in the IUCN, and enabling cooperation countries to present success stories at international events. And lastly, the project Sustainable Tourism and Protected Areas in a Post-COVID World. So this project aims to develop a more crisis-resilient and sustainable tourism landscape and in spirit of building back better. So this improves the ecological and social aspects of tourism in and around protected and conserved areas. So this project was implemented by the IUCN with the support of the German Agency for International Cooperation on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development through their COVID-19 response measures for tourism program. So that was the 4 IUCN Green List project. To continue, may we have Ms. Angela Nini Hortesano to talk about the sustainable tourism practices.
So now let us proceed with the sustainable tourism practices of IUCN. And I would like to inform everyone that these are just some of their sustainable practices, so di pa ni sila mahudjud tanan. So first we have here, currently it hosts over 600 protected and conserved areas that are engaged in the IUCN Green List community. So kani siya kay approximate numbers of formally and informally registered sites and networks of sites ang kaning 600. And then the second one, there are 60 plus countries that are engaged in the IUCN Green List community as well. And for the third one, contributing to global biodiversity goals. The IUCN Green List contributes to all of the UN Biodiversity Convention's Aichi targets. So what does Aichi targets aim to do? So they aim to improve the status of biodiversity by safeguarding ecosystems, mga species, and genetic diversity. And most directly, kuan man ni siya sa Aichi Target 11. So ang Aichi Target 11 describes what an improved conservation network would look like for marine, mga terrestrial, inland water areas, including kanang mga freshwater ecosystems. So it was said that by 2020, at least 17% of terrestrial and inland water and 10% of coastal and marine areas, especially areas of particular importance for biodiversity and ecosystem services, are conserved through effectively and equitably managed and ecologically representative and well-connected systems of protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures, and integrated into the wider landscapes and seascapes. So, kanisiya, it is intended also nga makasupport ni siya og mga bag-o nga targets and mga goals that are established for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. And the next one, contributing to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Or basically, it is knowing the role of protected areas in the climate change battle. So on your screens, protected and conserved areas have a critical role to play in mitigating and adapting to climate change and in reducing the risk of disasters caused by natural hazards and severe climate events. So, the IUCN Green List Standard contributes to advancing equitable governance and effective management of mga protected areas. Nag-include na po dira ang embedding climate change mitigation, ang adaptation and disaster risk reduction elements through all 4 components of the standard. So, these 4 components of the standard kay good governance, sound design and planning, effective management, And the last one is the successful conservation outcomes. So effectively managed protected areas are an essential part of the global and local response to climate change. And the last one, the Green List advances global sustainable development. So on your screens, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. So provides goals for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. So at its heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals or the SDGs, wherein this can be found sa atong campus near SM Hall. And most especially, it was discussed by Miss Claire sa atua sa una. So, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call for action by all countries in global partnership, they understand that in order to combat climate change, para makapromote og human health and well-being, para maprotektahan ang atong mga oceans and forests, and also to end poverty and other forms of deprivation, we must also implement policies that enhance health and education to lessen inequality and especially para i-promote ang sustainable economic development. So the SDGs recognize the need to protect the natural world and its life-giving services, also to urgently fulfill the needs of 9 billion people by 2050. So, for example, producing more food for the growing human population, SDG 2, which is zero hunger, will require fresh water supplies for adequate irrigation. So SDG 6 na siya, which is the clean water and sanitation. And the availability of fresh water depends on healthy ecosystems, which is the SDG 14, life below water, and SDG 15, life on land, which are increasingly impacted by climate change. SDG 13, which is the climate action. So protecting these ecosystems, it requires strong institutions. Dapat pod ang governance and cooperation from the local to the international level, which is the SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and with SDG 17, ang partnerships for the goals. So, thank you, and that's all for my part. And now, here is Miss Bernales to tackle about the remaining slides about criteria for the programs.
We have here the last topic, criteria for programs. Component 1, good governance. There are two criterions for good governance. Criterion 1.1, guarantee legitimacy and voice. There are clearly defined, legitimate, equitable, and functional governance arrangements in which the interests of civil society, rights holders, and stakeholders are fairly represented and addressed, including those relating to the establishment or designation of the site. Criterion 1.2, achieve transparency and accountability. Governance arrangements and decision-making processes are transparent and appropriately communicated, and responsibilities for implementation are clear, including a readily accessible process to identify, hear, and resolve complaints, disputes, or grievances. Component 2, sound design and planning, with the following criterions. Criterion 2.1, identify and understand major site values. The site's major values for conservation of nature with associated ecosystem services and cultural values are identified and understood. Criterion 2.2, design for long-term conservation of major site values. The design of the site and its landscape or seascape context support long-term maintenance of the major site values. Criterion 2.3, understand threats and challenges to major site values. Threats and challenges to major site values are described and understood in sufficient detail to enable effective planning and management to address them. Criterion 2.4, understand the social and economic context. The social and economic context of the site, including the positive and negative social and economic impacts of the way it is managed, is understood and reflected in site management goals and objectives. Component 3, effective management, has two criterions. Criterion 3.1, manage threats. Threats are being actively and effectively responded to so that their impact is not compromising the maintenance of major set values or the achievement of the area's goals and objectives. Criterion 3.2, effectively and fairly enforce laws and regulations. Relevant laws, regulations, and restrictions are fairly and effectively applied in all aspects of the protected area management and operations. Component 4, successful conservation outcomes, has three criterions. Criterion 4.1, demonstrate conservation of major natural values. The area is meeting or exceeding the performance thresholds for nature conservation consistent with its IUCN protected area management category. Criterion 4.2, demonstrate conservation of major associated ecosystem services. The area is maintaining and providing the major ecosystem service values. And lastly, Criterion 4.3, demonstrate conservation of major cultural values. The area is maintaining and providing for the persistence of major cultural values. That's all for Group 1's report. Thank you for listening.